Area Services Committee meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is a report on the Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting that was held this morning. There are only 3 items on the open agenda, the first being an update on the provincial solid waste initiatives. Federal and provincial government are continuing with their plans to ban single-use plastics. Director Pranger suggested that agricultural plastics should be recycled and staff should work towards that being included. There seemed to be broad support by the committee to lobby for further expansion of the plastics recycling program. Then we moved on to the outdoor learning program in Thompson Regional Park. Director Engar expressed some concerns about proper liability insurance, safety around mountain lions, and safety regarding COVID-19. Staff said they would respond to those concerns. And finally, we had a short discussion surrounding the classification of the regional and community parks and trails. At the RAC's agenda, the corporate report was simply to introduce the project, and I believe that is part of our agenda at our committee meeting today too. That's a quick summary of the RAC's meeting this morning. So now I will turn things over to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking for approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items.
So move, Raymond.
Thank you, Director Raymond. Second, Director Dixon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Next item is 4.1. We have a presentation by Nicole Bellet on the BC Energy Step Code. And I believe Ms. Bellet is on the line.
Welcome, Ms. Bellet.
Thank you. May I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. We all see that?
Yeah.
We do.
Yes. Okay, great. Perfect. Then I'll start. So, yes, I wanted to present you this. Well, I'm sure you are aware of the step code already, but maybe I can entice you to adopt it sooner than later. So that's my goal today. So the Energy Step Code was introduced by the province in 2017. It's a voluntary standard at this point. And it sets higher requirement for energy efficiency. And it has, as the names tells, it has a series of steps towards higher energy efficient. And why is it important to be more energy efficient in our house? Well, right now in BC, 22% of all the CO2 emissions are created by buildings. But by lighting or heating our buildings. And so that's why it's pretty significant. Beside, of course, transportation and industry, but these are 2 big items too. And so tackling the climate change is the greatest health opportunity we have, because in the air pollution alone in Canada cost us Canadian $53 billion per year. And this number comes from the Canadian Medical Association. So 53 billion that if we were cleaning our air, we could save. So that's pretty significant. So the goal of this step code is to, by 2032, all new buildings would be 80% more energy efficient than a home built today. Yes, I think you can stop me or ask me a question on the way if you wish, if I can see you. I'm not sure if I'll be able to.
Yeah, typically, Ms. Bellamy, we allow the directors to make comments or questions at the end of the presentations. So,
okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So here on this graph, you can see the timeline on the left side. On the bottom, you see part 9 and part 3. Part 9 is just a simple building like a house, and part 3 is multi-story or more complex building. And so you have the step number 1 and 2 are missing here, but the number 1 is just, it's not linked to any energy requirement. And so it's only to get tested, the number 1. So it's very, very easy. The step 2 is only 10%. The step 3, I'm just keeping with the house right now because it's easier. There's slight difference between a house and a complex building. So on the right side, you can see the energy efficiency. So step 3 for a house is 20% more energy. Step 4, 40%. Step 5, 80%. And when we talk about net zero energy ready, it means that the house is 80% more efficient, and also as it is built to receive, to generate its own, to create its own energy with either solar, heat pump, or something that we might not know at this point. So this is it. So the difference between the building code and the step code is that, so the step code is it's not prescriptive. It doesn't tell you you need like 2 feet of insulation or blah, blah, blah. No, it's just the performance of the house at the end. That's what's important. And so you work with an energy advisor and they do some modeling. So depending on the design of the house, and they work with you to try to make the house, the most efficient. And at the end, there's a test. And you can see the middle photo here is like the air tightness testing. That's one of the most important things. At this moment, there's 70% of local government that have referenced the step code in their bylaws or policy. Okay. And so there's, these are some of the towns. There are a few missing. So you can see that there's small cities and big cities alike. And I bolded a few local cities that are closer to us, like Langley, Fort Moody, Pitt Meadow, Maple Ridge, Abbotsford. And so all have adopted the step code at this point. Well, half of them actually started really with the step code, and the other half have notified their intent to start the process. So at this point, actually, Abbotsford just is starting in October 2020, actually, with the step code. Before that, they started in January 2019, just as an incentive. They were going faster. They were giving they were speeding up the process, the application process with the builders if they were adopting the step code. But now it's mandatory, starting right now, sometime in October. Okay. So the trade-off of the step code, it will increase the construction cost, but mostly for the upper steps. So the first 3 steps are the lower step, and they're not very expensive at all. And I know that's one of the, I'm sure it's a concern for everybody, especially in this time, not to raise the cost. And the second trade-off is the local government. They have to be trained on the new practices. The benefit is it's improved comfort by better managing temperature, improved health, by better managing the fresh air throughout the building, reduced noise through better insulation and air tightness, and require less energy, save money on your energy bill, and they're more durable. Here I put two case study, and it's two city in or town in a climate zone number 5, which is colder than in the Fraser Valley, of course. And so for these two houses that are kind of standard houses, 4-bedroom, 2,500 square feet anyway, and it's so the cost, it's 0% above the cost to build the existing energy efficient requirement of the BC building code. So the same price, and the other case as less than 1% above the cost. And these two houses reach the step 3 right now. So this is 20% more energy efficient. So it shows that with a little bit attention to details, with everyday material, you can build a house that is 20% more energy efficient without, it costing more money. Also, the other thing that it can bring in the area is an economic driver for different energy alternative or fenestration or insulation, heat pump, So this is coming from a market forecast from Vancouver Economic Commission. So they're projecting an economic driver with this with the adoption of the STEP code. Okay, and my request for you, for the board, is to ask the staff to send the initial notification for the intent to include the STEP code into the bylaws in a near future. And to sum up, the presentation is that it's for a negligible cost to the city or the builders, you can have a huge health effect to your community. Thank you very much for listening.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Bellamy. Very nice presentation. I'll open things up to directors regarding comments or questions.
Davidson?
Director Davidson, Director Big.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess this question is probably both to Ms. Bellaby and through staff. If we're considering things like secondary suite policies and changes to allow that within the electoral areas, what does a change in building code do to somebody who's looking to build out a secondary suite on a structure that is not compliant with the whatever this revised business code or building code would look like? Does that put a need to retrofit the existing structure and upgrade it to that code? And I guess another question on that would be is how easy, if I understood the presentation correctly, it sounds like to get to step 3, it's a very nominal expenditure, but it's not clear to me if that needs to happen during construction or can an existing structure be retrofitted after the fact for a low cost to get it to like step 3. So that's kind of what my questions are about. Thank you.
Good.
So
thank you, Director
I
David.
can answer part of it, and I'll let other people more knowledgeable. But so the most cost-efficient time to make a house energy efficient is to make it when it's first built. So after the fact, it's much more expensive to have these houses 80% more energy efficient. So it's much more costly. So that's why it's important to start as soon as possible. So we will save all this money. I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Director Davidson, maybe we could forward this question on to our new building manager and see what his take is on, for instance, you question a renovation. Would that trigger a improvement to the whole structure's energy efficiency?
correct, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tony Bartko. I'm newly hired manager of inspection services here for the Fraser Valley Regional District. And just to answer the question, firstly, the step code is primarily aimed at new construction, because the whole idea of the step code is to manage air leakage out of a house. By managing air leakage out of a house, you can use heat exchangers to take out the heat from the air that's exhausted out of the house. And in order for the air to be exhausted in an appropriate manner, the whole building has to be built airtight. So retrofitting an existing building to meet step 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 for that matter, would be a very difficult undertaking. It would cost way too much money. So this is primarily intended for brand new construction. And right now we're looking at only single family dwellings because that's a place where we're going to realize the most amount of gain. The step code is heading towards commercial buildings, but it hasn't quite got there yet. So we're looking primarily at single family dwellings. And the step code has evolved to townhouses, but townhouses are very tricky in a sense that there's quite a few openings in the building envelope, and it's very difficult to manage them currently. So right now, I think that would be the safest answer. It's only intended to be applied to new buildings just because of the complexity involved in retrofitting.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Bartko, and thank you, Director Beals.
Okay, I was thinking along the same lines, although I have a lot of new development possibilities in my area, which would be whole new neighborhoods. One, and I have been talking to Graham Daniluz, our head of planning. I don't know how many people are well trained. I was thinking it's a shame that we didn't use some of the CERB funding to retrain people in a lot of things, whether it's energy efficiency or building efficiency. Although there is one aspect I do think about, and it's if you have an airtight house, it might not be as healthy, but there are ways around that too. There was a fellow in Australia who designed natural air conditioning units that didn't take any energy at all, designed on termite hills, because termites need to be the perfect temperature, but they need ventilation, and so it was ventilated for both heating and cooling. And another thing I've been looking into is geo-air ducts, which would take the heat from the ground or the cooling from the ground, depending on the time of year. Both things are, ideal when you're building a new development, for sure. But I'd like to see that in our new neighborhood plans, and some incentives to get people to do that for sure, because I think it's really important moving forward. And fireproofing, but also thermal mass and geo-air and geothermal and whatever, depending on the circumstances, different kinds of power energy as well.
Good. Thank you for your comments, Director Bales.
Director Engar.
Director Engar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Bartko, welcome to the FVRD, and thank you for your explanation as well as the good presentation, Ms. Belay. The question I have is, being a nuts and bolts guy, I'd love to be able to see some of these practical suggestions, just to sort of verify in my own mind that we're implementing codes that would be practical and usable to the average consumer. Living in the rural areas here, for instance, we have a wood stove, a highly efficient wood stove on a stainless steel chimney in the center of the home, provides radiant heat. And when the power goes out, which it frequently does, and it was out for 30 hours recently, having that necessity of the backup is very important. So how we would apply these things to individual, more rural areas is my mind is focused on, and I'm sure there are solutions. So I'd be very eager to hear more of them as we have opportunities. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Engar. Ms. Bellamy, did you want to respond to the question regarding wood stoves, etc.?
Not really. I'm sorry. I'm not really I'm sure it's you know, if a wood stove would be like as a second, how do you say that? A backup, a backup system, it would be accepted, I'm pretty sure. But we would, and the generating your heat yourself, I mean, by energy efficiency is only in the higher step. So the first few steps, it's only making sure that your house is, you know, keep the heat that you produce in it. And already that's a pretty good, that would be a very good improvement. The net zero, when you use the heat pump or the solar system, that will come later. The technology is improving so fast right now. It's you know, it's so much more efficient right now to have a solar panel than 5 years ago, than 2 years ago. So it is improving all the time, and we have time. That's why the provincial government did a step code. So you start just putting in the builders that, okay, we have to build our house more efficient. And so you start with 1 and you're just testing, and the step 2 goes 10%, which is not a big deal, you know, just more attention to detail. And then so it gives the time for people to get to know how that system works. And then we get later on is the, you know, to be self-sufficient, I mean, with creating your own energy, but that will come later.
Good.
Adamson.
Director Adamson.
Yeah, I missed a little bit of that front of your presentation because I was trying to find a place with reception. But I 30 years ago, I brought, myself and my partner, we brought in high density styrofoam with aluminum on both sides and built sunrooms out of it. And we also used high density styrofoam with wood on both sides for the floors. It's, to me, doing a new house, it should be built right from the start with the high density, you know, styrofoam, metal roof to keep it, and metal exteriors, sure, to keep it fireproof. And I mean, it's just a stroke of a pen. It'll cost a little bit more at the start, but I was talking to a lady on one of the reserves near my house, and they have these new homes built, and I think she paid $7 for hydro for the month, and that heat, everything was hydro, and those were, I would say, townhouses because they were all joined, but it's built with this high density styrofoam. It may cost a little more up the front, but I mean, the savings in operation, it's just year after year, you're making money off it. And for retrofit, I had a renovation company with my partner for 30 years. We did a lot of thermal window replacement, high density, well, not high density, we already talked about that, but you know, insulating walls, re-insulating walls, and putting siding on the outside, and all these things to make them more efficient. I think that retrofitting is a wonderful idea. What I didn't like about the programs the government has put out in the past is they'll say you get a big discount on say, I don't know, $5,000 off windows if you buy it from these authorized dealers. So it was giving these people that were authorized dealers a chance to, I don't know, it's like, it wasn't a level playing field. And they seemed to make, I'm rambling here, but you know, a customer that I would go and price 5,000, they would go and price 8,000 or 9,000 and then take the deduction off and stuff like that. I think if the government's going to operate, giving any kind of grants to any of these things, it should also be to the do-it-yourselfer, because we don't really care. Yeah,
Mr. Chair?
Director Adamson, I think we're straying from the topic. We're not talking about grant funding. We're talking about this program that
I support it, but go further.
Thank you, Director Adamson.
Yeah.
Director Raymond, did you have a
Well,
question?
I was just saying it was getting into a little political speech there, and we know that he is running in the area in the present voting going on for the provincial government, and I was about to cut him off. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raymond.
Can I comment on that? It had nothing to do with it. This is what I believed before I started running.
We'll leave the political discussion to the side, I think, and focus on our agenda. Any other directors with questions or comments? Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a quick question. I think, is this mandatory right now, or are we trying to encourage people to do this? Like some clarification.
Okay, thank you, Director Dixon. Ms. Bellamy, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, it's not mandatory right now. It might become mandatory by the province at some point. The goal is by 2030 to have all new buildings 80% more efficient. So it's not mandatory. The province would like everybody, all the government to implement it as soon as possible because it will, save a lot of CO2. And the one way of incentivize, there's different ways of incentivize it for a city or for a district. And you can to make it appealing for developers. But anyway, so that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bellamy. Directors, any other questions or comments? For myself, I would, could you tell us whether our surrounding municipalities such as Chilliwack, Mission, Agassiz, Hope have brought this into effect?
I actually presented in front of the Mission Council a couple months ago, and it was sent forward. So it's being studied by the staff right now at the moment. But as I showed you, Maple Ridge has started, Abbotsford has started, Pitt Meadow, Langley. I don't think Chilliwack was part of that. I don't think they started. But there's 70% of local government that started. So a majority of them.
Yeah, thank you. One concern that I think our builders would have is if they're not conversant with the standards, then in the electoral areas, they're going to have to learn a whole new process for their building style if they're not doing the same thing in their work in the municipalities. The other thing that I was wondering about is I always had thought that the province of BC were the people that led the BC Building Code amendments and why this isn't something that they would be looking at standardizing rather than local governments taking the initiative.
I think that it was political, that they didn't want to be the bad guy that makes something mandatory. And so they and different cities are at different point in their, development. And so it's, yeah, I think it's just, it was too hard for them politically, I think, to make it mandatory. That's my point. I don't know.
Thank you. So any
Director Engar?
Director Engar and then Director Bales.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up, I'd really like to be able to converse sometime with you, Mr. Bartko. I'm guessing you have a good handle on what these different upgrade levels mean. And for instance, just as a homeowner, I'm looking at it and saying, well, are the solar panels now at the place where it makes sense to implement it even in an area that doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight? All these questions around making your house more efficient. Would it be fair to say that you are an expert in this area, or you have the expertise that I could draw on?
Thank you very much for asking the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to comment on that. And I was on the steering committee, Step Code steering committee a little while ago. And right now, the leaders in Step Code would be Langley Township. They have a wonderful program. And also West Vancouver, North Vancouver, and District of North Vancouver. They're all under the auspices or the umbrella of a fellow named Tim Rice. He's the chief building official in North Vancouver, city of North Vancouver. And he is one of the leaders in Energy Step Code. Right now, the Energy Step Code is a voluntary under the building code. The next iteration of the building code to be released is in 2 or 3 years. Consequently, we might be looking at maybe step 3 being mandatory. Steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all various levels of conformance. And as the presenter said, it's 2032, the buildings are all to be net zero. That means if you pull electricity off the grid, solar panels or whatnot would be necessary to put energy back into the grid. That would be a net zero type of building. I could reach out to the various municipalities. A very good colleague, friend of mine, is in Township of Langley, and if need be, we could draw on his expertise because he has actually staff that are specifically dedicated to this. Because the building, step code is not mandatory under the building code right now. Municipalities such as ours who don't have the staff resources to be able to devote to this tend not to enforce these things. And you know, you can see from an efficiency standpoint, I think that's the right tact to take. However, the municipalities that have actually begun to implement it, they do it on a through a development permit or through some kind of an incentive program. The DP process, perhaps they give you a graded floor area. From a building code perspective or from a building permit processing perspective, we can say, if you achieve step 3, we'll process your application right away, so there's no queue. Of course, that 6 to 8 weeks processing time saves the builder a great deal of time.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. If I may follow up, Mr. Chair, one time.
Go ahead, Director Engar.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback, Mr. Barco. That's excellent. I think what would be really essential for me is being a hands-on guy who built his own home and has a bit of an understanding of things is to kind of see the different options that are being offered. And then I could make a good recommendation of what I think would be manageable in my electoral area. So I'd be all ears if there's any opportunity to draw on your knowledge and expertise, or you could gather something for us to further kind of give us some guidelines of that step 3 phase and what it entails and how that looks in the average home, what would change and from what we're currently doing. That would be very, very beneficial.
If I may just jump in here for a second, Mr. Chair. I would really prefer if individual directors did not approach staff with one-off requests. And if this is something that the committee would like to put into to Mr. Barco's work plan, it did sound like it's quite a lot of work that he is going to have to reach out to other jurisdictions and information gathering. And so if this is something, if this is a subject that is of interest to the full committee, I would love to see a motion put forward to that effect. I think we run into danger when individual directors start creating these kinds of projects.
Okay, thank you for the wise advice, Ms. Kinnaman. And I think I would be in agreement with that direction. This is the first I've heard of the STEPCO. I think I would certainly like to spend some time learning more about it and thinking about it and talking to people in the industry regarding this before a decision is made. So my sense is that amongst ourselves, we should talk about this and just see where this falls in our priorities. So with that, I'll turn things over to directors for further questions and comments. Director Bales was next in the queue.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. But then I was also thinking we're going to be working on a neighborhood plan in OCP, and to the head of planning and Mr. Barco, how we can work that in, whether there can be incentives worked into the NCP or the OCP within the next couple of years, because it could be all part of that planning process.
Okay, Good. Thank you, Director Bales. So once again, we're very early in this process. This is something that we can devote some attention to and try and find just where the committee would like to place this in our priorities.
Davidson?
Director Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize if I missed this, but I believe Mr. Barco made a comment about the likelihood of this, the step code showing up in the building code in due course anyway. And with that in mind, I'm kind of wondering as to why we have why we have a request for a motion that we're going to go the way of the BC Building Code when it's kind of inevitable that we're going to do it, whatever the BC Building Code is doing anyway. So why is this of import to us here today now? And I was wondering if, through the chair, to Ms. Belay, if she had any comments to share on that. Thank you.
Yes, sure. I have a quick comment. Is that as I showed, air pollution, the CO2 that we create with heating our house, it affects our health, and it affects the whole climate change. And so, but just the air pollution costs us $53 billion per year in cost related and health related costs. And so that's why I think it's so important to adopt it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have I have another meeting, and I'm sorry I have to leave you here.
Oh, I think that will work out with our agenda. Thank you, Ms. Billy.
Sorry, and thank you very much for your listening to my presentation.
Oh, much appreciated. Good. So I think we've opened up this discussion on obviously an important topic, and we'll be able to look for in the future towards prioritizing whether this is something that we want to put at the top of the list or elsewhere. So I think we will move back to our agenda, turning things to our CEO.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving down to 5.1, we have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of July 14th, 2020.
For a motion, Director Dixon, second.
Davidson.
Director Davidson, any discussion? Director Bales.
Oh, I'll just say I'm still not quite happy with the minutes, but I'll pass on it for now. But I do think we need to stick to just the not do too much of a story around the minutes. Just keep it really concise.
Okay, thank you for that direction. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Next is 5.2. We have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of September 9th, 2020.
Okay.
Move, Raymond.
Move, Director Raymond. Second.
Second, Stobart.
Director Stobart, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Next is 5.3. We have the draft Electoral Areas Priority Setting Workshop minutes of September 17th, 2020.
Any, looking for a motion. Move, Director Dixon. Second.
Director Raymond.
Second, Director Raymond. Any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
6.1, we have a funding commitment for the Sunshine Valley Community Recreation Society in Electoral Area B. There's a motion for your consideration.
Okay, looking for a motion. Move, Director Dixon. Second, Director Bales. Any discussion?
Discussion, Raymond.
Director Raymond, please go ahead.
Thank you. I know Director Adamson isn't going to like this very much, but considering what he's doing right now and running in the provincial election, this could be construed as vote buying, even though he may have put it in quite some time ago. And I am deeply concerned about that. I also feel that because of what is happening right now and what he is doing, it would be in a big conflict of interest because he could gain profit from it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Raymond, for expressing your concerns. My understanding is that it is the responsibility of the director to declare conflict if he feels or they feel that that is the case. So I think we will likely turn this or give Mr. or Director Adamson the responsibility in this regard, unless staff would like to.
No, I think you've summarized that quite well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So on the funding commitment, any more discussion or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
Next is 6.2. We have the 2020 grant and aid request for Spuzum First Nation in Electoral Area B.
Mr. Chair.
Move Director Raymond. Second, Director Dixon. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Director Raymond.
I am putting the same concerns forward with this as I did the last one, and I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Raymond. And so the same comments apply regarding the conflict of interest situation. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary? Director Raymond has expressed his interest in voting against this motion. Evidently, everyone else is in favor, so the motion is carried.
6.3, we have the 2020 grant and aid request for First Hope Scouting in Electoral Area B.
Looking for a motion. Move Director Bales. Need a seconder. Director.
Over.
Yeah. Any discussion?
Once again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Raymond. Go ahead.
Again, I will express my concerns here, and it's more than just a conflict of interest. It is more, I think the issue is more along the perception that this could be vote buying in a provincial election. Thank you. And I will be voting against it.
Thank you for your comments, Director Raymond. Pardon me?
It's Adamson. I'm trying to get make a comment.
Okay, Director Adamson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. These grants are always put in motion. Every year I give Spuzum something to go. Last year it was to go to a seniors shelter, like a roof that a gathering place. The year before that, I gave them money for their greenhouse. And this year it's just timing. It's the end of the season on grants and making sure everybody gets it before the end of the year. And this has nothing to do with whether I ran or not. This is strictly what I've been doing for the last 12 years.
I believe we're on the Hope Scouting grant and aid right now.
Oh yeah, same thing. Okay, Hope Scouting. I gave them money before to buy equipment. I gave them money to buy a trailer. I try to give away money to all the kids in the area, in the services that they go to. So this is not anything to do with politics whatsoever. This is just what I do all the time. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Adamson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary. Director Raymond, Director Stobart are contrary, so the motion passes.
6.4, we have a 2020 grant and aid request for the Chilliwack River Valley Volunteer Fire Department. I would like to just comment at the outset of this one, of course, our Chilliwack River Volunteer Fire Department is well acquainted with the COVID-19 safety protocols. And in the event that they do go forward with their annual Christmas appreciation meal, I have no doubt that they have a safety plan in place to make sure that that's done in a safe and physically distant manner.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. Looking for a motion.
So moved. Director
Second, Adamson.
Director Angar moves. Second, Director Adamson. Any discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Angar.
Yeah, I've spoken with our chief, and they're very aware of the COVID situation. And, you know, all our volunteers have really stuck their necks out this year and done a great job. And I'm happy to see them somehow rewarded. Initially, my suggestion was perhaps you wanted to give each household a family of a turkey or whatever was appropriate. but they look like they're moving ahead with some kind of established dinner, and I'm sure they're going to be very cautious. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Engar. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
6.5, we have the 2020 grant and aid request for the McConnell Creek Farmers Institute in Electoral Area F.
Move Davidson.
Move Director Davidson. Second.
Adamson.
Freeman.
Davidson.
Director Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just fully supported this cornerstone facility in our neighborhood, and COVID's hit it, so it needs support. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Item 6.6 are the 2020 financial plan amendments. There is a motion for your consideration, and our CFO, Kelly Lounsborough, is on the line if you have any questions.
Good. Thank you. Looking for a motion. Move Director Dixon. Second.
Adamson.
Move Director Adamson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Moving down to 7.1, we have the nominal crown tenure for Nakaman Island Shoreline Protection Project. There's a motion for your consideration.
For a motion.
Stobart.
Move Director Stobart. Second.
Davidson.
Director Davidson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
7.2, we have the Fraser Valley Regional District Hatzick Prairie Water System Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1561.
Move Davidson.
Move Director Davidson.
Second, Adamson.
Second, Director Adamson. Any discussion?
Discussion, Davidson.
Go ahead, Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. So through to staff, as they may know, I'm looking for assurances that the water usage will only be for domestic purposes for these people joining the water system. And I don't know if that assurance is in place yet. I'm hoping they can comment.
Okay, thank you, Director Davidson. Maybe we'll look to Director of Engineering, Mr. Islam.
Yeah, thank you through Mr. Chair. My understanding is this is going to be for domestic water usage only. And so that is our understanding. And this system is only for domestic purposes. So that's the way we would like to have the connections done.
Chair, can I follow up?
Sure. Thank you, Director Islam. Turning it back to Director Davidson.
So as staff may know, my concern or neighborhood concern in the past has been that there are high consumers on the system who initially connected as domestic use, but then switched to high consumption, in this case, poultry use. And my understanding is that today there's nothing that would stop anybody once connected from using the water for whatever reason they want, regardless of how they declare their use to be at the time that they petition and connect. I'm not aware of anything changing on that front, and it's making me somewhat concerned. And maybe Mr. Islam could comment.
Yeah, again, my understanding it is only for domestic usage, so we will restrict this connections with the 1-inch or 25 millimeter connections. So the usage, high usage, should be dealt with from that perspective. But as you know, Sterling and I are both, and Dave Roblin, both working on this in terms of trying to find any other way to restrict this bylaw, but there is no other mechanism that we have in place so far that we can just tell them that you cannot connect it for any other purpose, but it is for domestic purpose. And but if the change, like, you know, the commercial purpose could be someone having a hair salon in their house, or some washing their truck or something like that for commercial purpose. And this is a gray area, and staff are looking into it to figure out what would be the best way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Islam, any other? Director Davidson.
Yeah, so I think I'm looking for something a bit more definitive and concrete. And I can think of scenarios where, you know, ownership can change, properties can be consolidated, zoning can change, any number of things could happen in the future that again, once connected, as there is no barrier to somebody once they are connected, using the water however they see fit. I know we had discussions before about changing the fee tiers, but I'd like to see something more concrete. And with that in mind, I'm thinking that it would make sense to refer this back to staff. The Miracle Valley aquifer assessment is highly relevant as well. If that came out green lights, I wouldn't have these concerns. So I'm going to I'd like to make a motion that we refer this back to staff for further clarification on how domestic only water use can be assured until such time that we have some results from the Miracle Valley aquifer assessment.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Director Davidson. So on our referral motion, there's no opportunity for discussion.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
on a referral motion, there is discussion, or there is an opportunity for discussion.
So I am confused by...
It's not a postponement, correct? This is just referring back for more information.
Okay, so this is still open for discussion then. Thank you. So I believe Director Adamson, you had a comment?
Well, I seconded it, and I agree that that you should take more time looking at it. It's hard to judge the future, what the people are going to be, and maybe there's a way. I got a question. Are there meters? Are there meters on these water systems there?
Yes, they are metered.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
So we would know by consumption. We could just limit. I don't know. I'd like to hear the answers too. So yeah.
Yes, too, Mr. Chair. Yeah, they will be metered, and it is tiered in terms of a heavy consumption will pay a lot more money. But again, Director Davidson's concern is clear, and we understand that because of the aquifer studies are on the way. So we are not done with those yet. So until we have enough information, these sort of things are going to be a little difficult for us for staff to determine exactly what needs to be done. But at the same time, I am working with my staff to kind of finding a way so we can address these. It is a gray area as we cannot just distinguish between various types of businesses, especially small businesses. So if it is commercial, it is commercial. So that way it makes it very difficult for us. I know are open to challenges. So we may end up being challenged and going through legal system. So that will cost the service area more money. So we're trying to find a way to deal with this. So we will be working with Director Davidson on this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Islam. Any other discussion regarding the referral motion? Seeing none on the motion, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Moving down to 8.1, we have the Development Variance Permit 2020-10 to reduce required setbacks for the existing patio and proposed addition to the Sasquatch Inn at 46001 Lougheed Highway in Electoral Area C.
Good, thank you. I'm looking for a motion.
Director Engar, so moved.
Engar moves.
Second, Raymond.
Second, Director Raymond. Any discussion? Director Bales.
I am in favor of this with the one condition that has come up before, but I'm not sure if it's been resolved. So to staff, has the overflow of water that runs across the parking lot ever been resolved? Because this might impact that even more. And I just want to know if it's been looked into and resolved. It's come up for other things as well. Was talking to the owner a couple days ago, and he didn't seem to be very aware of it. So the fact that he's not very aware of it just leaves me concerned that it's not been dealt with. I just don't know one way or the other. So
okay, thank you, Director Bales. So we'll look to staff.
Thank you to the chair. No, we as staff can't resolve that issue on our own. But what I can give you some comfort on is that through the building permit process, we'll engage with Fraser Health and make sure that there are adequate sewage disposal facilities that can handle the wastes. But part of the proposed works is an addition to the kitchen area and some improved bathroom facilities. That gives us an opportunity to look to Fraser Health and make sure that sewage disposal is adequately addressed.
Good, thank you, Mr. Daniluz. Director Stobart, did I see you? No? Okay. Director Bales' lights is still on.
I just wanted to say I'm fine with it then. So
thank you, Director Bales. Any other discussion? Like a big undertaking. Interesting to see how this evolves. So on the motion, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Item 8.2 is Development Variance Permit 2020-18 to vary the maximum height for an accessory building at 45713 Elizabeth Drive in Electoral Area H.
A motion, Director Dixon moves.
Seconded, Director Engar.
Moves. Second is Director Engar. Any discussion, Director?
Quickly.
Dixon,
thank
please.
you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to staff in this report, and I am fine with this, but it just you did follow up around that it wouldn't be used for a secondary suite or those type of things, and so I'm gathering that you're satisfied with that as well.
Mr. Daniluz.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we looked at that in some detail. We spoke with the property owners, and the proposed building involves a small second story loft, if you will. It's 240 or so square feet open to the rest of the garage, accessed by stairs to the garage. And we're confident that the owners are faithfully representing how they intend to use it as a garage and storage and possibly office space. And we're comfortable that the design of the building and the height variance doesn't increase the risk for unlawful conversions for, say, carriage houses or some other non-conforming use in the future. So we're confident in this.
Okay, thanks very much.
Good, thank you, Mr. Daniluz and Director Dixon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 8.3 is Development Permit 2020-19 for the form and character of Phase 3 subdivision of Aquadel Crossing at 1885 Columbia Valley Road, Electoral Area H, to permit the construction of a mix of ranchers, 2-story and 3-story single-family detached resort. There's a motion for your consideration.
Okay, looking to Director Dixon.
Thank you very much. So the motion that I would like to make is to refer this back to the staff.
Okay,
do you want me to explain why first?
Yeah. We'll get a seconder if we can.
Second.
Director Adamson seconds. Looking for a comments, Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this development has a little bit of a history of changing the plans and not necessarily following initially what they were planning to do. And so what's happened is had a meeting last week with Director Daniluz as well as Mr. Bennett and some of the strata people at Aquadel about a different issue, but they brought this up that they weren't aware of what Phase 3 really is going to entail. And they felt that since they are the strata and will end up at some point paying strata fees for, they weren't sure, there was discussion about a gym and a pickleball court. So they want an opportunity to really have a chance to look at the plans. The person has just received them a couple weeks ago. and needs time to look through them and then advise the strata how to move, just if they have any feedback. So that is the rationale behind a referral back.
Good. Thank you for that explanation, Director Dixon. Any
I have one more
further discussion?
I do.
Oh,
just one quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
And I know that this is will be in the development permit, but the other concern that the community have also are the large homes with the basements. And I've been out to the property and understand the slope of the land, and that those do make sense. But I do want some assurances that those larger homes with the basements will not have suite accessibility, because there's no interest in that right now. And also that those would just be the ones built at the back around the mountain, not on the front of the road, because that was, at least that was my understanding, that those fit back there against the mountain and wouldn't really fit at the front of the road. So what I'm not quite sure of is what if somebody comes along and buys a front of the lot and wants the 3-story home with a basement, because that's the part that the community would not be happy with. So just looking for some assurances around that one. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. I'll look to Mr. Daniels.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, indeed, Director Dixon, that's our intent with the form of character permit, to limit the basement plus 3-story homes to those lots that have the slope that lends itself to these 3-story structures, if you will. And so that's our intent, is to limit it to those lots only. And also, you mentioned exterior access to these 3rd-story basements. That's a concern in the community, because exterior access to these in-ground basements, if you will, there's a concern amongst the strata owners that this lends itself to future conversion into second suites. And strata is concerned because that's not consistent with their rules, and it places a greater demand on strata services and parking and other things. So it is indeed the intention of the development permit that there be no exterior access to those basements, and we'll ensure when the permit comes forward to you next month that those things are very clear.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Daniels and Director Dixon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Director Bales.
Oh, I just wondered about a safety aspect of having access through the basement. If there was any fire, like, is there any consideration there? I understand where you're coming from for sure, but I think of the safety aspect as well.
Okay, thank you. Director or Mr. Daniels?
That's an astute question. Yeah, yes, indeed. We do need to think about egress, how people would leave those spaces. And there are provisions in the code for other means of egress. It doesn't have to be a door. And so limiting outside access would be consistent with the building code, but we would need to ensure through the building permit process that there is adequate escape from those spaces.
So definitely a window, not a door.
Good. Thank you, Director Bales. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
8.4, we have official community plan amendment bylaw number 1599 to implement the findings of 2 recent reports regarding the Chilliwack River erosion setback line.
Looking to Director Engar.
So moved.
Move Director Engar, second.
Adamson. Oh, where?
Ford seconds. Any discussion?
Yes, Chair, please. Director Engar.
Go ahead, Director Engar.
So these are very minor adjustments, if my understanding is correct. And it's 2016 was one of the reports. This is the first time I've had to deal with this, so forgive me if I'm sounding rather juvenile in some of these things. But the process, I'm looking at extensive conclusions that need to be addressed in the OCP. I'm not quite sure, especially during this time of COVID, if a Zoom meeting is going to be adequate, if there's anybody that is impacted that I'm not aware of. Any comments that I could receive back from staff would be appreciated to help sort of clarify best way to move forward with this.
We'll look to Mr. Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that the community plan amendment that's in front of us today is minor. It's really just meant to implement the findings of a couple of reviews of the erosion setback line. And it's fairly small, limited, and technical in nature. That certainly is the case. On the other hand, the Local Government Act sets out the requirements for what the board needs to consider when it's looking at amending a community plan, and those things don't respond to the scope of the amendment. And so a major community plan amendment would involve similar considerations as a minor one. What we've tried to do in the staff report and in the consultation strategy is to keep things to a minimum, which I think is in keeping with the nature of the amendment. It's minor and technical, and in our view, doesn't require a lot of consultation. There's no need, I think, to consider early and ongoing consultation with a variety of groups. That's the language of the Local Government Act, by the way. And providing a referral and an opportunity for input is really all that's appropriate. It does need a public hearing and to probably need some explanation to the community. So we've tried to keep it pretty tight, but the host of recommendations you're seeing in front of us really stem from Local Government Act requirements that the board consider these things.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Danilus. Any further?
So if I could follow up, please, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Danilus. I'm just puzzled, or I'm really wondering how, if nobody's impacted, we're going to do a Zoom meeting, and there may be myself and you looking at the computer screen. Is it going to be adequate way to do a public meeting?
Or Mr. Danilus?
Zoom community meetings are not my ideal of how to host community meetings, but I do think that that could be a suitable way to connect with people who want to have a conversation about this, but it shouldn't be our only mechanism, and we'd love to meet with other people. You'll notice in the staff report that we emphasize reaching out directly to the property owners that are affected. They have the most the most impact here, and if we can have conversations on the phone or even in our office with property owners, individual property owners directly, I think we really do what we need to do here as far as consultation goes.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. In my electoral area, we're also grappling with how to handle public hearings, but we are 7 months into this pandemic situation, and it would seem like we can't put a no-through road on our development process at our local government forever. And while this may not be an ideal solution, it would seem like it may be the best solution for the situation we find ourselves in, from my perspective.
If I could, one more thing, Mr. Chair, please.
Director Engar.
So if you would, through you, Chair, to staff, if you wouldn't mind sort of after our meeting here today, helping me see the best way forward as far as when to hold a meeting. Are we talking to residents that may be impacted slightly by this first? I know you sent out letters recently, but just to give me some clear guidance as to next steps and what's appropriate to put this thing properly in order. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Engar. Mr. Danilus, you're okay with that direction? Thank you. So on the motion, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item is 8.5. We have the Sandpiper Golf Course redevelopment proposal and neighborhood plan process at 14282 Morris Valley Road in Electoral Area C.
Okay, looking for motion. Director Bales moves. Second.
Second, Raymond.
Second, Director Raymond. Any discussion? Director Bales.
Okay, I'm definitely in favor of this, and I've had discussion with staff with a strong provision for the public input. It'll take some time, and there was a little bit of concern raised by the public that this might create a bias, but I assured them that I discussed that same concern, and it shouldn't create a bias as long as the FERD are driving the process with the consultant, and the public has a fair venue to get their message across, which might be a survey and input through the process, I would imagine, continual input through the process. So with that in mind, and also like I did talk to somebody up in Hemlock, and because they had a similar process up there where a consultant was hired to speed up the process. Just wanted to see how it went for them, and they were generally okay with it, although they felt a little bit left out of one aspect of the trail parks. So in the end, I'm not sure if that is a finished process though yet. So yeah, I just want to make sure that there's continual consultation with the public. So, and I will be voting in favor.
Good, thank you. Director Bales, any other discussion?
Dixon.
Director Dixon, please.
I'm just trying to really understand this. So a letter has gone to the developer, I'm assuming the resort. Do we have a preference about option 1, option 2, option 3, or do they get to choose, or have they chosen already and I missed that in here?
Oh, there's the motion on the front page, which is basically option 1 in the staff report.
Okay, I missed it then, thanks.
I think, am I clear on that?
Thank you.
That is basically option 1.
Good, thank you, Director Dixon. Any other discussion? It's a major development that we're going to be looking at Harrison Mills. So it's going to be really interesting. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Next item is 8.6. We have commercial gravel operation permit 2020-01 for Statlu Resources, 12 kilometers, Chehalis Forest Service Road in Electoral Area C. There's a motion for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion. Director Bales?
I'd like
Go ahead. Pardon me?
Oh, I want to speak to it after getting it on the table.
Okay, Director Dixon moves. Second. Looking for a seconder. Director Raymond, thank you. Seconds. Discussion. Director Bales.
Oh, I just would like to go with option 1 and 2. That was in the staff report instead of the motion that's on the front page. So that would mean referring back to staff as well as a mail out to the public. I think there's still a lot of the public that feel like they haven't been included or they don't know. There's still a lot of public that don't know what's going on. So I'd like them to realize in the mail out that there's limited options, but just to know that they were included. That it is in the bylaw of public consultation, but it's very vague. And I know that the Statlu applicant talked about doing a website, but it might be after the fact, and I just would like them to be included before the decision is made. And as well, there's a couple issues that I'd like to work on with staff, and that is a variation on hours of operation. There's a lot of people that spend time right up in the pit. There's a lot of partying that goes on and camping that goes on right in the pit. So I might want to consider things like a fence on the, I forgot to ask you about that today, but we did discuss that possibility because the pit owner actually owns both sides of the road. And in the past, I've noted that young kids on their dirt bikes are playing on the piles of gravel and sand on the one. They've agreed to move all their operation to the one side, but I still think it would be good to have a fence, because if they don't see the sand piles on the one side, they might just go to the other side and start playing in the other part of the pit on days off. So I think there's still a couple things I'd like to refer back to staff, and also to have a mail out just so the public is more aware of the tight limitations that we have and concerns with issues right at the pit and hours of operation right at the pit.
Okay, good. Thank you, Director Bales. So we have a motion, we have a seconder. Mr. Daniels, did you want to comment on the comments that Director Bales made?
Sure, thank you, Chair. This is a challenging application in the sense that there are some strong community concerns about the use of the road and dust that are outside of our jurisdiction, and we're not able to deal with as we'd like to in our permit and our approval processes. We can lean on provincial ministries to address those issues, and that'll be an important part of our response to this proposal. I think Director Bales is suggesting a mail out to the community, and that's entirely appropriate choice for the board. And Director Bales mentioned that she acknowledged that we have a limited authority here, and looking for, I think, an information mail out, and that's quite achievable for us. So we can get started on that quite soon. Hours of work, the draft permit in front of us does include some addresses hours of work on summer weekends during the summer, with the intent of avoiding noise and dust impacts to the kinds of surrounding recreational uses that Director Bales mentioned. But I think Director Bales is asking us to look a little bit more at hours of work and consider fencing, and we can do that also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any discussion?
Davidson?
Director Dixon and then Director Davidson.
Mine is just quick, I think. There are no homes around this gravel operation area, are there? Like 12 kilometers up the road?
We'll look to Mr. Daniels.
The nearest homes are about, it's 5 or 8 kilometers as the crow flies. It's some distance. Of course, it's a further distance when traveled on roads, but in a straight line, it's 5 or 8 kilometers. The real, the community concern that arises is that the gravel trucks bringing material to market travel down through the community, and there's a couple of kilometers of road that gets within about a kilometer of other residences, and this industrial use of the gravel roadway creates a lot of dust that readily migrates to Morris Valley community, to the homes along the river and Tapadera Estates and nearby areas. So that's a strong concern.
Okay, go ahead, Director Dixon.
And so when it talks about dust mitigation, that part of the road is included as well, or could be?
This is one of those that's got a lot of importance for us, and yet it's outside of our jurisdiction and outside the scope of the commercial gravel operations bylaw, certainly. And we met this morning with the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources to talk about how they might be able to address this issue through the road permitting processes. This is really a road that the province, through FLNRO, has responsibility and authority for. We don't, but I think we can advocate for the community interests, bring the players to the table, and try to find solutions to those issues.
Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. So one thing had jumped out at me in the staff report. There's a statement under the public input section stating that commercial gravel operations bylaw number 1181 does not provide for public input on permit applications. And that statement is counterintuitive for me, in that if you look at the site-specific conditions section of the bylaw, it does say that it does make a reference to public input as to what site-specific conditions might be. So in that context, I definitely support a motion to refer if either staff or Director Bales feel that staff or the public have not been given adequate opportunity to provide input into what site-specific conditions might be appropriate to a permit that ultimately we must issue. But there still needs to be that, there's still that opportunity for community input into what those site-specific conditions are. So assuming I'm understanding the bylaw correctly, I'm looking at this line in the staff report that says it doesn't allow for public input on permit applications. While that may be true, I guess there's certainly opportunity for public input as to what goes into the permit itself that we issue. But anyway, so like I was saying, I'm supporting a motion to refer, sorry, at this time.
Just for clarity, Mr. Chair, there is no motion for referral on the floor at this time. The motion that was moved and seconded is the one that is in the agenda package. Director Bales commented that she would like to refer it back to staff, but she did not make a motion and get a seconder on that.
Good, thank you for keeping us on side. So did Director Bales want to make that motion?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion for option 1 and 2, which would be to refer it back to staff as well as having a communication plan, as it is written in the
Okay,
staff report.
To Ms. Riley on
Director
procedure.
Bales, I just want to confirm the wording of your motion. So I'm catching your motion to be that you would like to refer it back to staff for additional input.
Yep. Okay. And also for consultation or a mail out with the public. I would be fine with the way it's worded in the staff report 1 and 2, but I'd like to combine the 2.
Okay, but we need the actual wording that you wish to put on the floor.
Okay, hang on.
Just to make it clear what everybody is voting on.
Sorry to delay. I'm looking for 1 and 2. Okay. Okay, option 1. Under section 63, bylaw number 1181, if the board determines that the information provided is inadequate for determining compliance with the bylaw, the board can require that the applicant provide further information or reports to address the inadequacy. If the board wishes to require additional information before considering issuance of the permit, the following motion would be appropriate. Motion for additional information that the FERD board refer commercial gravel operation permit to 2020-01-10. I think I don't have my glasses on, sorry. To staff for further work with the applicant to address noted information deficiencies. So we've discussed some deficiencies a little bit. And option 2, additional public input. I'll see if I can get directly to.
If I can help you, Director Bales, if you look all the way down, there's a section that says motion for public input, that section there.
Yeah, motion for public input that a mail out be sent to the Morris Valley community to provide information to the about applicant by Statlew Resources Inc. for CGO permit 2020-01 and to invite public submissions on 1, whether the applicant meets the requirements of FERD commercial gravel operation bylaw number 1181, and 2, what site-specific permit conditions related to bylaw requirements should be considered by the FERD board, and that the FERD board defer consideration of CGO permit 2020-01 to the November 24th, 2020 meeting of the FERD board to allow opportunity for the community submissions on the permit application.
Okay, Thank you, Director Bales. Looking for,
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
sorry for the interruption.
Riley?
I'd just like to read that back for the record so that it's clear, because there was some preliminary information from the report that Director Bales read out.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read back the motion just for clarity. That the FERD board refer commercial gravel operations permit 2020-01 to staff for further work with the applicant to address noted information deficiencies. And that a mail out be sent to the Morris Valley community to provide information to the about the application by Statlu Resources Inc. for CGO permit 2020-01 and to invite public submissions on 1, whether the application meets the requirements of the FERD commercial gravel operations bylaw number 1181, and 2, what site specific permit conditions related to bylaw requirements should be considered by the FERD board, and that the FBRD board defer consideration of CGO permit 2020-01 to the November 24th, 2020 meeting of the FERD board to allow opportunity for community submissions on the permit application.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. So Director Bales, is that okay with you the way the motion stands?
Fine, the way it's written.
Okay. So we're looking for a seconder.
Davidson.
Move second, Director Davidson. Discussion. Okay, I just thought maybe Mr. Danlos, the staff report says that the permit conditions have been met. I wondered if you had a comment on the concerns that are being expressed by directors.
Director Bales expressed a concern about site safety and fencing and how the operation might affect the use of adjacent lands, recreational use of adjacent lands. That's something we can go back to the applicant and look for more information or response to. That's a fair ask of the applicant in my view. So we would endeavor to do that before bringing it back next month.
Okay, and the consultation side of the issue?
The commercial gravel operations bylaw, it doesn't provide for consultation in the way that our development procedures bylaw does when it comes to a development variance permit, for example. So in the case of a DVP, the bylaw prescribes a mail out. It's very specific about how the variance permit gets considered and processed to provide for public input. The commercial gravel operations bylaw doesn't do that. And that's because it's a regulatory bylaw, and it's the situation that the board faces with the issuance of the permit is more like the issuance of a building permit for a house, where a zoning bylaw allows a residential use on a property. And if the property owner meets the building code and other requirements to build a house, they're entitled to a permit. That's much closer to the circumstances facing the board on commercial gravel operations permits. But it's quite right to say that the board has the prerogative of looking for public input on whether the proposal, the information provided in the proposals is complete, the application's complete, whether it meets the requirements of the bylaw, and to seek public advice or input on what kinds of permit conditions could be put in the permit to ensure that the bylaw provisions are met. The challenge, I think, will be that there's an awful lot of nuance in those asks of the public, and what we most typically see from public responses are statements about the effects that the pit might have on noise, dust in the area. I think we've received 14 submissions already, which give us a pretty good flavor of the concerns. And people tend to ask for that permits be denied, or that until the road gets paved, or these dust issues on the road, for example. And one concern that arises, I think, is that when we invite broad public input, we will ultimately, I think, disappoint people who are looking for the board to refuse a permit or to make sure that road dust issues get addressed, when in fact these issues are outside of the scope of our authority. In any case, they're outside of the scope of the bylaw, and the board can't withhold issuance of a permit for those kinds of reasons. And so when people face those kinds of disappointments, sometimes they feel that the consultation wasn't genuine, or that the decisions were preordained irrespective of their input. And there can be negative consequences when people draw those kinds of conclusions. But Director Bales was, I think, very careful to say that our public mail out ought to describe the limitations that the board faces, and that this is an opportunity to explain those things to the community. And the resolution seeks to invite public input in an appropriately narrow range, if you will, for the kinds of considerations that the board has in front of it. So I think that many of these subtleties will get lost on, won't be reflected in the kinds of input we get from the community. But I think it's on the right track that our mail out attempt to explain what the board has in front of it, the range of decision making, and very importantly, let the community know if they have concerns, say, about road dust, who is responsible for road dust? How can they bring forward their concerns to the responsible authorities?
Okay, good. Thank you for a very nice explanation of the situation we find ourselves in. So on the motion, any other discussion? I see Director Bales, your light is on.
I was just going to express that I really just want more clarity for the community, because they are confused about the limitations of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Director Bales. So, Director
Davidson? Sorry, just to reiterate, I just want to, I know that Mr. Daniel said it's more like a building permit process. To me, it's a little bit in between a building permit and say a classic planning permit. And that while we must issue the permit if it complies with the bylaw and everything about it, we do have the opportunity to craft that permit to meet the desires of the public within that narrow range. So I think we just have to, for me anyway, we have to get used to the idea of allowing a full public input process to this as required, or as deemed necessary. And I think the area director is probably the best one to speak to that. So thank you. I support the motion.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving down to 9.1, we have developing a policy for classification of regional versus community parks and trails. There's a motion for your consideration. And we do have David Urban on the line if there are any questions.
Good. Thank you. Promotion.
Raymond.
Director Raymond. For a seconder.
Davidson.
Director Davidson, any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really wanted to look forward to this. I think that it's important for all of our areas. I know I've asked about it a couple times for the Lakeside Trail, and I just want to, generally you're using the word parks, and what I'm wondering is a trail a possibility to be included in here as well, a regional trail? And either way, like, I think that this will be a good discussion. I look forward to seeing the policy.
Good, thank you, Director Dixon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now we move all the way down to reports by electoral area directors.
Okay, so we will start with Director Bales, perhaps. Okay, Director Dixon.
Thank you. Yes, I kind of forgot about this. Well, we did have an Area 8 Zoom meeting towards the end of September, and certainly hearing a lot of pretty positive feedback, and people would like to do that more often. And just an opportunity to, in my case, we also had our MP Mark Strahl as well as Lori Thronis online, and I think it just helped clarify sort of the various jurisdictions that are in our area. So I thought that went well, and just a lot of thanks and shout out to all those who have been busy helping clean up after the storm. I know just neighbors have been cleaning off the road, as well as Hydro and BC Parks, and all kinds of other people have been out there. So thanks for that.
Good, thank you, Director Dixon. We'll look to Director Raymond.
I'm fine, thanks.
Thank you, Director Raymond. Director Stobart.
The cows are content, and that's about it.
Good way to have it. Thank you, Director Stobart. Director Davidson.
Nothing for me, thank you, Chair.
Boy, people are quiet today. Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Adamson. I'm not sure if we haven't lost Director Adamson. Oh, no.
Yeah, hi.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Director Adamson.
Okay. The Yale ratepayers had a meeting on Tuesday. It's good to have the community center opened more. They had everything spaced out according to what Sterling had told them, and it went well. And other people just like being out together, so it was a good night. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director Adamson. Director Engar.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's been an interesting time, a stormy fall as usual. There's a huge number of fishermen on the river and causing some issues at Wilson Road Dike, which staff are well aware of. And I think we lost almost about 30 hours of power there for a little bit. So thank goodness for generators. And I did have some nice feedback from the Residents Association and their ambassador project, where they were handing out flyers and greeting people in the community at a distance and with their yellow vests on, looking very authoritative. And the feedback that I got primarily was that it was very well received. That for the most part, people were asking politely, well, can we stay here? Can we do this? Can we do that? Where are the trails? So it was an excellent opportunity for the community to sort of corral in a lot of the people that come here and don't have any sense of what's expected of them and how to treat the place. And overall, I think it was very successful. Look forward to getting their stats from them on paper, the number of people they talked to, and the feedback, and specifically around what types of questions. So I'll share that with the board when I have that. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Engar. And we'll look to Director Bales now. Okay. Thank you, Director Bales. For myself, the Popham Falls community, amazing in the middle of a pandemic. We have a really strong development process taking place. A lot of new homes being built, a lot of new lots being sold. So some seems surprising, but staff are handling it very well. Otherwise, it's quiet in our community. So I will turn things back to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So item 13 is our public question period for items relevant to the agenda, and it's been our practice for some time now that we have encouraged members of the public to submit written questions to us prior to the meeting. And at this time, I can tell you that we did not receive any questions, and we do not have anybody on the phone or on the Zoom call for this item. So that would take us down to item 14, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Good. For a mover, Director Stobart, second.
Adamson.
Director Adamson, seconds. All those in favor, contrary, the motion carries. Thank you, directors, and thank you,